All right, everyone, good afternoon. Grab a cookie, grab a water if you'd like before we start, and just like to welcome you all to Ask the Experts, the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce's series to help business leaders grow their companies with practical advice and answers that you can implement right away. A special welcome to those that are watching remotely on Zoom, as you're a valuable part of our audience today, and I'll be chatting along with you, so please respond in the chat. And hello to those watching the recording on YouTube. My name is Paul Casey, and I do leadership and team development at Growing Forward Services, and I'm also the executive director at Leadership Tri-Cities. Yay. I'm privileged to be your facilitator today. This is a free benefit of your chamber membership, and it couldn't be possible without the generous sponsorship of STCU. With us today is Julie. Come on up here. Did I say it right? Come on. Greet our crowd today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julie Flinders, and I'm with the STCU Credit Union in our business banking group. STCU is proud to be part of the Tri-Cities community and sponsor Ask the Experts for nearly 5 years. Time flies when you're opening new market and navigating in the pandemic or post-pandemic. We actually have four locations. We have one at our Southbridge location, one at Queensgate, one in Pasco, and then we have the business group on Steptoe. Pasco and commercial, the VOCA may not have been a vocabulary until a couple of years ago, but I have no doubt about becoming before this book. I'm super nervous. Living, working the vocabulary, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And of course, we continue to navigate these elements in our personal and professional lives on a daily basis. At STCU, we're here to partner with you and work through these challenges. We have expert business bankers, investment, home loans, and commercial services to help you in every step of our journey. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for your sponsorship of Ask the Experts. So how we do this is approximately half of our 90 minutes together. Our experts will be presenting the gold nuggets on our topic of strategic planning. And for the second half, they will answer your questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, and we would encourage everyone to think of one question, even if you're an introvert, think of one question today to ask the experts, whether you're on virtual or you're here in the room. You can text me at 509-392-1895. That will keep that anonymous. If you're here in the room, you could just ask the question, of course, but you can always text me, or you can put it in the chat if you want to write that number down, or open your phone and already put that in your phone so you're ready for a question. That would be great. Again, put that in the chat if you're watching virtually. I'm going to vet those questions and feed them to the experts and getting to as many of them as possible in our time. Their contact information is in the back with their, if you want to contact them to get to know them a little bit better after this. And let me get right to the introductions. So LoAnn Ayers is the president and CEO of United Way of Benton and Franklin counties, and is the new president of the Columbia Center Rotary. That's cool. She has been a tri-citizen, I like how you made that into a word, for more than 30 years with experience in business startup and ownership, international business development, teaching, and academic administration. She holds an MBA and a doctorate from WSU. Rebekah Woods is the 6th president for Columbia Basin College. She has over 25 years of experience in higher education. President Woods earned her PhD in organizational leadership and Juris Doctor, is that how you say that? Juris, okay, from Regent University. She serves on various local boards and organizations, including the Tri-City Development Council, Visit Tri-Cities, Washington State STEM Education Foundation, Boys and Girls Clubs of Benton and Franklin counties, Pasco, Kiwanis, and Watson's Paws for the Cause. She believes in the transformational power of education for individuals, families, and generations to come. She is committed to working together with educational partners and business and industry to meet the workforce needs of the Tri-Cities. And on the end, Zach Ratkai is the local government program director for Benton-Franklin Council of Governments and is the owner of Sageland Strategic, a facilitation firm specializing in organizational strategy development. He is passionate about helping communities and organizations grow through long-term planning coupled with short-term execution to produce results. He holds a master's in public administration from the University of Colorado and has nearly 20 years experience working in the public sector in Colorado and Washington. He believes that everything within the community is connected and works to enable successful communities and governments in our region and around the country. Let's give it up for our experts today. LoAnn, we'll start with you.
Excellent. Well, it's a privilege to spend a few minutes to talk to you about the exciting opportunity you have ahead of you to go to the next step in strategic planning. As I looked through the registration list, I saw small organizations, large organizations with multiple geographies, so a really mixed group. And I would imagine that you all have mixed experiences with strategic planning. There may be some of you who are plan curious. You haven't done one before, and now you're here. There may be some of you who are plan warriors, who've done them and done them and done them. And then that might lead to some of you who have planning PTSD. But I want to first start with what strategic planning is not, with just sharing a little cautionary tale from the trail. And so I'll just say, long ago, in a far, far away galaxy called Richland, there were a group of smart people who got together and they said, you know, we really need to plan for the future because things are crazy changing all the time. And so they put together a plan to plan. And then they invited others to join them to go into more detail and implement the plan to plan. This is starting to sound familiar with some of you. So they got more smart people together, each of them taking a piece of the plan to implement as they explored what the market looked like, what were changing within their organization, what was changing outside of their control, maybe at the governmental level, and started putting things on paper. Well, 9 months later, yes, almost like birthing a baby, and 297 hours later, the plan was born. They shared the plan with others in their organization. There was great excitement. And then change happened. The market changed. The economy changed. This was even pre-pandemic levels. We didn't even have that word in our vocabulary. And then the plan just became a file on the server and a dusty document on the shelf. Because one of the things about the planning process that's so valuable is building in opportunities for re-examination of change. So that's where we started our conversation. We were talking about the strategic planning process because it's not the plan, it's the planning process. So what is a strategic plan? It's really good strategy is about the planning process, a structured way of thinking through what is affecting your business now, where do you want to go in the future? It is really an investment in the future. It is a process to capture adaptive strategies so that you aren't just stuck on the gerbil wheel. Someone might have used that example before. Many businesses, whether they're large or small, they're going down a course and people are fighting fires every day. They are on the gerbil wheel of working in their business, whether it's a for-profit business or a not-for-profit business. Answering customers, solving problems, and they just think, you know, if I just work faster, or if we just invest a little bit more in this new technology, or if we bring others on board, we'll get to the goal, we'll get there. Without stopping to think about where is there where we still want to be? So working, instead of just working in your business, working on your business. And that's really the simple way of thinking about strategic planning process. So if you think about strategic planning, and our colleagues are going to go in much more depth in the how-to, who is it for? And why do you need it? Individuals use strategic planning to see where they want to go personally. So you may have a career plan, you may have a health plan. Families use the strategic planning process to say, what are priorities for our family? And what kind of steps do we need to take as parents or encouraging our children to get to the next, our goal as a family? Small businesses use it to keep from being diverted by opportunities that may not be all golden. So yes, I am an opportunist, and I have fallen a victim to, boy, this looks good, let's do this. Oh wait, this looks good, let's do that. Chasing opportunities is not necessarily a strategic advantage, but having a framework to evaluate those opportunities is part of the strategic planning process. Is this an opportunity that leads us to the goal that we're trying to achieve? Or is this a diversion that will take time and energy and money away from where we need to go? So it frees you to say no. And it frees your employees to say, hey, you should bring something to say, hey, I think this opportunity will help us get to our goal faster. Strategic planning process really helps your staff, your employees understand what are the goals, why were they set, what is my process in helping us get there. It really clarifies expectations and enhances communication. Because without knowing why that goal was set there, they may not have buy-in. They may not understand how their piece really helps you get to that goal, and can cause dissatisfaction, confusion, wasted time and energy and angst. So having the planning process being participative is really a critical part in having a plan that you can implement, that can adapt to changes. Why do you use that? I love this quote from Dale Carnegie, famous guy. It's really about investing now for a plan that can help you save time, money, and angst in the future. So I'm going to pause for a moment and say, okay, I started this question with this conversation with, we have a mixed audience in sizes and types of businesses. And how many of you have ever put together a strategic plan? Yeah. Yay. I love the response. I didn't say whether it was good, bad, ugly, effective, enduring, flexible. I just said, have you been part of the planning process before? And online, we probably have had about a mixed response as well. You can take that experience and really and use that as a platform to build upon the kinds of tips and pointers you're going to be hearing from our colleagues today. And that experience may have had some positive outcomes personally and professionally and for the organization, but it also, you know, life has changed so much because of COVID. We're in the emerging from COVID world, but our first slide talked about volatile, uncertain, ambiguous. That's every day, isn't it? We don't know what the next election is going to do, what the economy is going to do, what world politics are going to do. Locally, we don't know about what the ag market is going to do and how supply chain issues will affect production and all businesses. The labor market, the housing challenges, social challenges related to mental health in our children and our families and among our employees. Am I stacking up the list of things that are uncertain? And yet, if you have a strategic plan that you've gone through the thoughtful process of creating, you have evaluation points that you can say, what's changed, what's the same? How often do we need to go back and revisit our tactics to get to our goals? And that really helps give some level of confidence in a crazy, uncertain world. So before we move on to the how-to, just wanted to summarize the who is it for? Pretty much anyone. We all need to have the freedom to go about our work, knowing that we're pursuing a well thought out goal and we have steps to get us there. And we all understand why we chose the goal and who is going to be responsible for what steps. So that investment of time really gives you the freedom to focus and to say no to opportunities that may be more challenged than they're worth. Who's it for? Individuals, families, nonprofits, small businesses who've been caught up in the working in their business instead of taking a few hours to work on the business. Big businesses and organizations who have lots of departments where conflicting goals, personalities, and politics can get in the way of progress. So that's the, why do I need it? Who's it for? And now Dr. Woods is going to wow you. I told her I'd say that. With some practical tools on how to get there. What's the structure to go through? Who should be involved at what stages for the strategic planning process? So help me welcome Dr. Woods to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's absolute pleasure to be with you all. We actually just in the last couple years went through a strategic planning process. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you is about our experience and the approach that we took. But as LoAnn talked about, I mean, there's so many different types of organizations that are participating. There is by no means, one size fits all. So there's a lot of flexibility that needs to be built into the plan itself, but absolutely in the process as well. So I'll share some of our experiences and some of the things that work for us, but that does not by any means need to mean that it can work for you as well. So how to put it together? Absolutely, it needs to start with mission, vision, and values. The why do we exist? Who do we, what do we aspire to be? And then how do we actually do our work? These are things that should already be in place for every organization, and they should be regularly reviewed. There's no set timing necessarily by which they have to be looked at. Our board looks at ours every year, so it's an annual review. And there's never a time, where we're going to say, oh, we're no longer a community college, obviously. But sometimes you might have different, as we're going to talk about, just so many things are changing, and perhaps the nature of your business, the priorities, some of the specific things you're going to focus on might change. So that, like for us, there was a fairly significant rewrite of our mission statement. It just talked a little bit differently about how we articulated the work that we do and what was important to us and what our priorities really were overall as an institution. And that was a pretty significant rewrite, but that really was important for us to help share the message across the institution, why we existed and how we did our work together. Do all of you have, who here perhaps can just kind of talk briefly about your own mission, vision, and value, if you have those statements already in place, and if they are things that you look at on a regular basis? Anybody want to share?
There we do, and we're a nonprofit.
Okay.
But charity, so mission is that the foundation across what we do.
Okay.
So that is outlined as well as the vision and values on our website, and something we're in the middle of our strategic plan, doing the next one.
Oh,
So
great.
that's something that we use. I think more than mission and vision, is to remember the brand of values.
And did you start your strategic planning process by looking at the mission and vision?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful, fantastic. Yeah, even if you don't have a regular cycle through which you review it, the best time to make sure that you do that is then, of course, right before you start a strategic planning process. Make sure it's current. It's absolutely reflecting what you need it to be as you go into that process. All right, so what is the process? These are the kind of standard steps that I think that you can look at, and I'll do have a deep dive on each of these. So planning team. I think this is absolutely the first step to ensuring that you're going to have buy-in to the plan across the organization. I think it's a huge mistake if you just have, say, a leadership team sitting in the office or in the conference room by themselves and then putting this plan together. This is the great way to get lots of representation from across your organization. So for us, we were very intentional about making sure that we had a very diverse team. DEI is at this core of everything that we do as an institution. And so we made sure that at least 50% of our planning team, we had a large planning team, it was probably 25, I'm going to say. We made sure we had about 50% that were from historically underrepresented populations that were part of our planning team. We also, for the representative piece, I mean, that can be somewhat similar, but for us, we wanted to make sure that we had all the different classifications represented. So for us, it was faculty, it was administration, classified, different staff. So again, we were trying to have broad folks at the table. And we didn't necessarily want, you always have those folks that are always doing the work, that are always in leadership, they're always seen. we wanted to make sure that we were having different voices also involved in this process, so that we made sure we were being very inclusive for us. Internal versus external. A lot of planning teams, I've heard about, having whatever it is for you, a client, a customer representation on your planning team. We had students that were part of our planning team. We also had a community partner, so somebody that was not an employee, not in any way connected to the college, but we wanted to make sure that we had that external viewpoint embedded throughout our entire process. And so we had somebody from the community that served on our planning team. She has now actually been appointed by the governor to serve on our board of trustees, but there was no connection before this. But it was a great way for her to get involved with the college and really learn it at a pretty deep level. And then we were able to take that to the next level. The lead, I think you need to be very intentional. It sends a message who is going to be leading this work. For us, we had co-chairs. It was myself and then one of our deans. And just bluntly, I was like the figurehead, I was there at every meeting and was involved, but without my co-chair, it would not have happened. But we wanted to make sure that folks knew this was a plan that was being taken seriously. It was going to have broad buy-in and it was going to be supported from all levels of the institution. So we thought it was very important that I be involved in the team, with as much as my schedule would allow. We used consultants, and I think there's, you don't have to use consultants by any means. Obviously, a great benefit that they bring is expertise. But they also, it is a huge lift. So there's a lot of time involved in putting together a strategic plan. And for us, having the capacity, the additional capacity that came to this work by having external consultants leading this process for us was a huge benefit for us. And they don't have to be expensive. We as a public institution, we had to put out an RFP and got a variety of responses to that. Some were absolutely, off the charts, well out of our budget. And some were very affordable. So there's lots of options, local and otherwise. And I think there's lots of organizations that are part of the chamber that also do this work that can be available for that. The second step, and this is typically referred to as an environmental scan. So it's really making sure that you're starting by getting the current lay of the land. LoAnn talked about all the different things that are constantly changing, and that could just not be any truer than it is right now. And so this is really important to make sure that you're educating that planning team, especially if you were intentional about having other voices involved that may not always be involved. They may not necessarily know a lot of this information. So it's important to educate the full team and the whole campus. And we made sure that we had campus updates constantly along the way so folks knew what was happening. For us, reviewing different documents, we had several in the last several years, several different reports about the organization, different entities that had come in and done kind of reviews of different things at the campus. And so we made sure that we were going back and looking at all that work that had already been done. This can be looking at, making sure that you're looking at any kind of financial reports, any kind of KPIs that you already had in place and how you've been assessing yourself and what those metrics look like. Doing a deep dive into data. So for us, we started with a lot of internal data. So for us, it was looking at student success rates, our student population, the enrollment trends. We disaggregated that down. So we made sure that we're not just looking big picture, but we were looking at every specific different subpopulation. That also goes into demographics of your community. So making sure that depending on who you're serving, how is that population? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? How is it changing? How is the workforce changing? Gender changes within the workforce, age, all the different generations, and information about those different generations and how they like to work, what their expectations are, and how that has to go into defining how you do your work and who you are as an organization. Technology change, it could not be more true, from coming off of COVID with all of the new technologies that have come out of that, but then also all of the AI things that are coming about now that are literally just changing moment by moment. I think it's critically important we're not losing sight of that. That's going to just be as commonplace as, a calculator was just not too long ago. So we need to make sure that we're paying attention to all the technology changes that are happening in our world. A lot of the things that LoAnn already touched on, just any kind of cultural events, and this can be global, this can be local, labor changes, things that are happening at our state. Some of the things we were talking about, the minimum wage changes, a lot of the threshold changes for exempt employees, how that was going to be impacting our workforce and how we were able to staff different areas. And then a huge amount of stakeholder input. For us, we started with surveys. We did surveys for all of our employees, getting their input, getting what things were working well for them, what would they like to see differently, you know, kind of that keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. We did surveys for all of our students. We had open listening sessions for our community. We also had them for our campus. So it was just open to anybody that wanted to come and share with us, how is the college doing? What is the benefit we're providing? What could we be doing differently? What is working? What is not working? We had specific focus groups with very targeted questions for different community leaders that were invited to give us feedback. We also, for campus, did several affinity group sessions. So for us, it could be anything from, here was a group for women, here was a group for certain administrators, here was a group for different ages, here was a group for different races. And then we got feedback from campus that they wanted different affinity groups. One were asked for different faiths. So we did that. So that was kind of a safe space for folks to feel like they could share freely amongst those that they felt most comfortable with. And we wanted to be very intentional about providing those safe spaces so that we were getting honest feedback. We didn't want to be creating a plan that was, in essence, going to be based on folks not feeling free to truly tell us what needed to change at the institution. So we were doing everything possible to make sure that we were providing those comfortable spaces for them. We used our consultants as facilitators for those listening sessions, for the focus groups. For us, it provided an objective third-party person. So again, especially with, well, with all of the groups, with employees, with community members, that it wasn't, you know, like me sitting there saying, so how do you think the college is doing? And, you know, somebody might feel that they were going to personally offend me. So I might be there to kick it off, but then I left the room and turned it over to the consultant so they could truly feel free that they were giving anonymous feedback and it was going to be taken down and not judged in any way as it was being given. So the next step is deciding, okay, what are all the opportunities that are facing us? A SWOT analysis, I'm going to guess everybody knows what a SWOT analysis is and has done. It's a pretty traditional format that a lot of organizations do. We were following an appreciative inquiry model in the process that we put together. So it was a SOAR model. So it's strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. Has anybody heard of SOAR or used that model in your organizations? There'll be a link in the resource page. There's a few different links in the resource page in the handout that we have at the end. So I just kind of described it as, to me, the SWOT model perhaps is more of a deficit model, like what's wrong, what's not working, and how can we fix that? So how do we address that in the new strategic plan? Versus SOAR is more based on an asset model. What is working well? How can we build upon that? What is the best that we can be? Who do we really want to become? Sometimes the questions we were asking in some of the listening sessions and focus groups were, you know, like, what has been your best experience with CBC? Tell us about that and why. Why was it the best experience? So we were trying to take the positives that already happened, kind of dream big as to how can we make that the experience for everybody all the time. And then it was, you know, then it was dreaming about, okay, so now how can we achieve that? How can we define that and help design us achieving that? So instead of trying to, in essence, fix something that's broken, we were really trying to achieve some, help us achieve our dream. So the last step is really developing those strategies. So this is, you know, so how do we get there? Whether it's developing that dream or fixing that problem, whatever it is. And again, as LoAnn said, a lot of times your strategy helps you stay focused and not feel the pressure to be all things to all people. So a lot of times it's choosing, there's going to be nonstop opportunities of things that you can be working on. You're not going to be able to do it all. But you really do need to come up with a coherent set of intentional strategies that can help you achieve that vision. A few other things that I thought about as LoAnn was sharing, and I'll tie it into the last slide here on developing a timeline. This is not quick work for us. It took about 15 to 18 months. We had literally kicked it off in it's like December, January of 2019. Or 2020, December 2019, January 2020. So you know what happened? So our process ended up becoming 100% virtual. And of course, our consultants had never done it that way, but you know, we figure it out, right? And I think it worked great. We truly learned how to use all the tools available to us. But we absolutely took our time. And if you're going to be inclusive, if you're going to make sure that you have all voices represented, if you're going to make sure there's broad buy-in across the organization, it's not something that you can just rush, because then you're going to hear, what's this? And, you know, how did we come up with these strategies? Why is this the most important things for us to be working on? But if you've taken your time to bring people along to make sure that they're involved in the process, you're not going to be hearing that. So definitely don't feel like you need to rush it. But that's going to be different for every organization. Again, for us, it took about 1.5 years or so. You also need to be mindful of how long your plan is, especially in today's day and age. Gone are the days of 5-year plans, 10-year plans. Ours is a 3-year plan, but we are intentional about doing regular check-ins. And so we're about halfway through it right now. And we realize, okay, we bit off more than we can chew. So we're going in and trying to streamline. What are the true things in here that have to rise to the top that we're going to just put all of our resources in, making sure that we achieve these in the next 12 months. It absolutely has to be flexible enough. There's going to be things that you're not expecting, good things, bad things, making sure that you're not getting locked in so tight that when those opportunities come along, that you can't stop and find a way to fit that in. Maybe pause something else. If it's something that's really going to be a great opportunity for your organization, and that has to be a mindful decision. And it's obviously also things like, you know, obviously who was expecting the pandemic, but having the flexibility to pause the work and address those things and still fit them into the overall plan is really important, especially in today's day and age, maintaining that flexibility for your organization. With that, I am going to turn it over to Zach, who's going to talk about implementing the plans once they're developed.
All right, thank you, Rebekah, LoAnn. Certainly appreciate that intro, and I will say that the CVC plan was great. Having been sort of on the sidelines during its implementation, well, we're on the implementation now, but it's creation. So we are here to talk about implementation, and really strategic planning is so important to these days, because you look at generational change in the workplace and what new generations coming into the workplace desire from their employers. But we're also seeing that with multiple, I wouldn't say older generations, but just different generations. As we emerge post-COVID, and more people, staff and leaders are they're looking for more in a career. They're looking for more meaning, more significance, a little bit more of a stake in the future direction of the organization, a sense of belonging. Incorporating a strategic plan is really integral to that staff retainage, staff retention, staff attraction. By aligning your vision and mission, working in concert with your core values of your organization, your personal approach to work, you can build champions among your staff to implement the plan. We talked about champions buy-in during the process. They're just as important during the implementation stage as they are now. When I work with teams on strategic planning, when I apply the principles to my daily work for the region here at the COG, even my personal life, the plan is only as good as how it's being implemented throughout its life cycle. It has many steps, as we talked about in its creation, but implementation is decidedly an important step, and there's a number of steps that go beyond that as well. It helps you and your team remain accountable to your plan, to your customers, to your stakeholders, to your community, also to your staff and your team internally to your organization. And it helps you measure success and how you move forward with the plan, how you amend it as we go through the timelines of that. So one of the biggest items we talk about, mission and vision. Vision is very idealistic, but you need to have goals. We call them a BHAG. We use that, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And throughout your plan, you'll identify these goals, or maybe one continual goal for your organization. This goal, I always contend, must be so inspiring to you. It must be absolutely insane, completely crazy what you see your organization blossoming into the future. But it needs to be big and audacious enough to keep you, to help get you out of bed in the morning, to keep you driving into the office, to keep you logging into your computer, to keep your daily drive of working on your goals. This, having such a big, hairy, audacious goal within your strategic plan process only gets you motivation to implement that plan throughout its life cycle. Goals can be very general. It can be a general goal. It can guide objectives. It can help fulfill your strategies, even individual projects and action steps that you or your staff would take to implement and achieve that goal. But through that entire process, I invite you to think of the biggest goal you can, make sure it's inspirational. It gets you the action you need to implement your strategic plan. This provides accountability. And accountability of the plan can be a team-wide task. It involves your entire organization. It can involve your outside stakeholders, your customers. Sure, you can have a boss that micromanages and delegates tasks to implement the plan. But if you want buy-in to the plan and your organization strategy, you need to remain accountable and involve everybody. Forming clear targets, actionable tasks, and utilizing your team in creating the pathway creates this ownership and buy-in. And make this plan part of your culture. This is going to be a prevailing theme that we talked about earlier in the presentation. It's a prevailing theme that we impart around the region and through some of the work that we do. But this plan cannot sit on the shelf. We talk about who's been involved in the strategic plan process before, but how many people have worked for an organization that has a strategic plan but just kind of sits on the shelf? They've invested 5-6 figures sometimes. They've invested up to
297 hours.
297 hours, exactly. And it's just sitting there on the shelf. I know that many of the people I know in the consulting world can tell, yeah, okay, we got paid, so we're going to do that. But focusing on implementation, even as a facilitator, to help that plan grow and have that life cycle is key. Having it part of your culture, we'll go into that in a further slide, but really other ways to measure the implementations of your plan are KPIs and metrics. So KPIs and metrics, KPI is a key performance indicator. As we have on the slide, and I'm doing a little bit of death by PowerPoint, sorry here, but all KPIs are metrics, but not all metrics are KPIs. And what we talk about is key performance indicators give you specific viewpoints of the performance of your strategic plan. So if you have a goal and underneath it, it has an action item to get a team together to do a compensation and classification job analysis for your staff within 30 days. You accomplish that in 29 days. You've got your key performance indicator to say, okay, we've accomplished that. We're moving forward with our plan. They can tell you exactly, incorporating these into your plan can tell you, your stakeholders, your board, your bosses, your leadership, where you stand in the implementation of the plan. Are these key performance indicators? Are we meeting these performance of accomplishing our goals and action steps to meet the big, hairy, audacious goal of our plan? General metrics give you just a general picture of how activities and functions are progressing. These are less specific and they don't necessarily give a lot of insights on their own, but they're more just sort of a classification of a collection of key performance indicators. And tracking is key. Now, this kind of gets into some of the stuff that I'm really interested about is your strategic plan is not only a guide for the future of your organization, how you conduct your daily, your weekly, your quarterly work, how you build your budget, but it's also a great marketing tool as well. It shows your stakeholders, your customers, you're dealing with public sector clients, your community at large, that you really care about the future. You care about planning strategically. You have goals for your company and you have goals that you want to meet for the future. It also shows you that planning for the future, it shows your staff, it shows potential staff members, applicants, that you care about the future, that planning is important for your organization. And it's also a mark of accountability and follow through. So you put your plan, it doesn't gather dust on the shelf. You put your plan out into the community, out on your website, out on your social media. You kind of have to be accountable because if people are paying attention, they're going to look at you and say, well, what have you done with this in the last year? You spend a lot of money got some cool graphics, got an awesome dashboard on your website, but I haven't seen any results. So it helps you remain accountable to your areas. And as I also look at too, marketing a strategic plan is great for attracting customers, leadership, investors, partners, and even job applicants too. I know when I've looked for jobs in the past, I always look at, okay, what's on the organization's website? Do they have any goals? And as Paul said in our introduction, I'm primary public sector for the last 20 years. So if I'm looking to apply for a city or a county government to see, okay, they've got goals for the future. They've got goals for the department I'm applying for. It really lets me know that this organization cares about their drive for the community, but also their staff as well. We talked about dashboards. I mentioned that before. That's sort of a key, like what you kind of see on the screen there. Now that's just a regular infographic, but it's just sort of a key one-page thing to show, okay, we're meeting our goals. We had 4 goals for the next year. You can mark them in red. Haven't started on any of these projects yet. To yellow, they're in progress. To green, these are completed goals, completed projects and actions. That dashboard really shows its great accountability to the people watching you, whether it's your customer base, your leadership or your board, but also shows your staff. It's kind of good competition. It shows your customers, hey, look what we're accomplishing here, and this is our drive and ambition, but it also drives the implementation part of continual improvement to your plan. It's a living document, it's like, as we like to say. And finally, looking at culture and meetings. This is really a fundamental key when I think of strategic planning and I think of implementation is, you know, you've been part of a strategic plan and you know that leadership's going through the motion. Maybe you show up to work one day and your boss comes down and says, hey, leadership team and I, the board, we went up to Leavenworth, kind of hung out, had a couple beers, had some great dinner, but we came up with a strategic plan. Here's your action steps for the next quarter. Okay, cool. You're a great employee for your company. You're going to want to do your work. You want to do your work well. But the biggest thing is, I think the biggest key to implementing a great strategic plan is to have a culture that obviously first wants to do a strategic plan. I think that's a great green flag as far as an organization goes. But involving, as we had said before, all levels of staff in the process. So rather than get a plan presented to you, you may go to a job where this is our strategic plan. We created it last year, but we're going to work on it at the end of this year. But here's some tasks for the next quarter. But if you're involved, your organizational leadership comes to you as an entry-level staff member, a middle manager, involving the people that maybe they work in the field, they're turning wrenches, they're out in the agriculture business and everything. They're going to bring ideas to your plan, but they're going to also be able to have that stake of ownership in the plan. And that buy-in, maybe some of their goals that they've seen in the field, and some of the goals that they do, answering the phone at the front counter, some of the tasks and items that they go through get incorporated into the plan. A plan ingrained in the culture that's built by the entire organization is going to be implemented on a daily basis. You get caught up in my notes here because I went off on a tangent. So it looks at it, you have all the staff, you have all the buy-in, you continually meet, you continually work to update your plan. Rebekah had a great final slide before she turned it over to me on the timeline of the plan. You know, this plan lasts for 3 years. During the implementation process, you break that down even further. So at the end of that 3rd year, you've got your big, hairy, audacious goal that you want to accomplish. But throughout the life plan of an implementation of the plan, you could have a goal or a project or an action step that lasts 12 months, or maybe the next quarter, the next 30 days. And you use those items as you look at your annual reviews, your quarterly reviews, even your budgeting to say, are we meeting our goals? Do we need to budget more for a project to meet that 3-year goal? It's a great metric to do that. It's a great metric to help implement the plan. And it's a great metric to accomplish your entire vision for your strategic plan. And one of the notes I took from both LoAnn and Rebekah is flexibility to address change and accept. Started doing a lot more of these plans during the COVID process. Obviously the flexibility to meet virtually was key, but the flexibility to say, no one ever saw a pandemic coming and how it impact the business world, how it impact local government, how it impact service to the community. And so being able to have that flexibility, ingraining a strategic plan to guide your daily, weekly rituals with your company, but also have that flexibility built in your culture to say, okay, let's take a look at this. Let's look at our goals. Let's look at our projects. We're gonna have to adjust. We're gonna have to scrub it, wash it clean, and come up with new goals for the remainder of its life cycle is going to be key for its success. And I think that's what I got. Oh, building champions, yes. Excuse me, sorry about that. Like I said before, I just want to reiterate that involving your entire team, involving your organization, what CBC did involving students, involving outside stakeholders, people that may or may not have set foot at CBC, but they have an opinion on the organization, they have an opinion on the future of higher education in the Tri-Cities, is great. It builds champions. It gets that word of mouth in the community that you're planning for the future. You've got goals, you've got projects, you've got strategies, you got big, hairy, audacious goals, and it really helps to implement that. Builds the champions. Your plan is only as good as the people implementing it, and that's how you see success there. So I think with that, turn it over. We'll talk about some resources. Thank you, everyone.
It's almost time for questions, so get those questions ready. You got 3 people to grill. I'm not going to throw out a challenge of stump someone, but you got 3 people to grill here. I wanted to first note that we will have an email handout to you that has hot links in it, so that you can just click in if you want to learn more about how to do SWOT analysis. If you want to learn more about doing a strategic plan and different models for doing a strategic plan, we have some hot links embedded in the handout. So that is your dig deeper resource. But I wanted to circle back, given that we have such diversity in our audience, to kind of to give an example that brings it home to a smaller organization. If you have 5, 15, 25 employees and limited time and money, how would you apply this? I'll use an example from my life. Big, hairy, audacious goal: regain time, make more money. Pretty darn simple, right? And that would be, so increasing profitability. What's in it for the owners? Regaining time and keeping more of the money, the hard-earned money. What's in it for employees? Being able to have bonuses, have better benefits. There's a what's in it for me answer to that big, hairy, audacious goal. And how do we do that? You know, after involving, talking to customers, talking to vendors, getting customer employee feedback about, I call it the CCSS model. What should we change? What should we continue? What should we stop? And what should we start? So I'm pretty simple, 4 things. I can't remember 5, so I have to keep it 4. Change, continue, start, stop. And looking at our organization, if we're going to be able to increase profitability and really agreeing upon, we need to retain customers. Sounds simple, pretty complex in this changing world. And we need our customers to give us more of their money. Not by increasing prices, but increasing the number of times they use our services or buy from us, increasing their referrals to others. So leveraging our existing customer base. That's not rocket science, right? That's been around forever, but bringing it back into this ever-changing world, and each of those had different KPIs. So for example, you know, using our technology better. So not buying new technology, that takes money, but how can we leverage the existing technology? I bet you all have some technology you aren't totally using, right? Like we make the investment, we learn just enough to use just enough, and yet there are features we haven't even explored yet. And then productive, happy staff, That sounds, again, it's not rocket science, but that was just a way of a translation from a large organization to a small organization. It took time. Every week in staff meeting, we had accountability measures to, you know, who is exploring what, gathering information as we're building the plan. And that rolled into, once the plan was agreed upon, accountability reports. You know, how are we doing in different KPIs and weekly staff meetings? So that's a micro example of choosing the right tools for your company. And I consider nonprofits businesses with a tax advantage. So same model applies. Whether you're a large nonprofit or a small nonprofit, we are businesses. And our mission is to serve customers, serve clients, make the world a better place in the nonprofit world for our clients. So I think now we have the opportunity to roll into questions.
Yep.
And are you going to
Yep.
facilitate that?
Yep,
Come
so if
on
you're
down.
in the audience, you can just raise your hand. You can also text me. We'll put my phone number up there again, if you want to stay anonymous. And if you're in the virtual audience, go ahead and put it in the chat. And I do have one from the virtual audience to kick us off. What are some software platforms that can be used for tracking KPIs and metrics?
Well, LoAnn's going to use a low-tech version. I love Excel. And it's in my price range. So it's not fancy, but it can be if it's shared and everybody knows who's accountable for what, and you have deadlines and you can hook that to your Outlook, so you have reminders and task lists. It's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, I think for organizations I've worked for and organizations I've worked with, we've used Monday.com, which is a project management software, but you can incorporate some automated metrics, some due dates. For my very conceptual, non-detailed mind, you can color code things, which looks really cool. That's why I'm such a fan of dashboards. But for like dashboard creation, I've used Excel, Word. I've worked with people that are really good at Canva, so using some of the graphic design metrics there as well. The other thing too, I think it's more manual, and I've been kind of toying with it a little bit, are Trello boards as well. So, doing some project management through that. There's some automation add-ons, you could do that. I know Monday.com and Trello both have free options, and then you can pay a certain amount per month, but that's really good at helping track not only implementations, but your performance metrics and deadlines, things like that.
We use Tableau. It's a reporting tool, and it's something we've already had and have been using, and it tracks all of our metrics. And so our IR department just built a new report and a new dashboard so that we do the little dial, the red, yellow, green, to track each of our goals and how we're doing.
In my version, I call that a stoplight report, on each KPI, are we red light? Uh-oh, better do something
Yep.
about yellow light. Going off track, green light, hey, kudos everyone, party time. Donut.
Yeah, let's get some coffee.
So you talked about planning for 18 months, and it's a 3-year plan. So basically half of your time you're planning for the future. How do you balance with addressing the current plan while also planning for the future half of the time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously that 18 months didn't eat into our 3-year plan that, started after we were done. So Jeanette, we then have 3 years now that we're going through that. But for the 18 months, when I got there, I inherited a plan. But honestly, it was one of those that had been built and was sitting on the shelf, and nobody really knew what was in it. Nobody was reading it, was following it. We weren't tracking anything. And so I kept saying to the board, obviously, we know what our priorities are. We know what our work is. So it's not as if just because this hasn't been followed, we're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. So we kept doing our work. I mean, we get a lot of priorities that are made for us by outside entities. So when I first got there, we were very intentional about setting 3 very specific high-level goals for the institution, all focused on our students and their success. And then develop the strategies of how to address those. So we were working on those at the same time that we were now, in essence, that didn't stop. Like, we didn't take a pause on that at the same time that we launched this new planning process. But it did help us, really do a deep dive into, are we missing something? Is what we're doing working? What needs to change? But so it's a lot of different, you keep all the plates spinning as you're going through all of that. So we absolutely just kept doing our work at the same time that we began a new planning process.
I think to add on to that as well, and it sounds like you kind of created one from scratch.
Yeah.
So you had your daily
Yeah.
metrics, creating one from scratch. Takes a while to build a brand new plan, and then working into that 3-year, 5-year, 10-year life cycle. If you're implementing it properly and it's ingrained into your culture, your organization, that your next cycle of renewing an entire plan shouldn't take that long.
Right.
Because you've already got an established foundation. And typically, you know, you'd want to work in your goals and your projects as sort of building blocks. So that way, maybe you're doing a 2-day retreat to do your new plan after that. Or longer, but not as.
So flexibility is an important part of a strategic plan. Is flexibility more of a function or representation of the plan? Or is flexibility more of a function of the culture within an organization?
Yes.
Say both, yeah.
Yeah, I would say both. I think having a flexible culture, you know, your plan could be the greatest plan in the world, and if you adhere to it word for word, I mean, that's not gonna happen, pandemic or not. So I think a flexible culture is foundational to a flexible plan. But understanding that, you know, things could change, you know, the next week, that can be fundamentally different.
First of all, thank you all for being here today. My question is more about words. Do you all use the goals, strategies, tactics, or like, you know, is there new language in strategic planning? And also, second question is, how many? You know, we've had strategic plans, people look at it and go, oh my gosh, there's too much. But it's like, do you say you said you organized yours around 2 big, was it 2? Did you just say
We
that?
have
Rebekah?
4 strategic priority
Okay,
areas,
uh-huh.
yeah.
So do you call those strategic, and I
So
realize
the words we
there's all
use,
kinds of
yeah,
words,
and you know, I almost talked about that, is that I don't know that there's a right or wrong, because there's so many different
Yeah.
models out there that we used what our consultants brought to us, which was new for me. Strategic priorities, its goals. I thought the next thing would have been strategies, but it's initiatives. And then it's strategies / projects. And honestly, sometimes we're constantly talking over each other because that's just not, it doesn't come natural for us, so it feels a little clunky to us.
Okay.
So probably in our next version, we might try and change some of the words so it feels a little, it flows off our tongue a little bit better, but
So you have 4, like your,
strategic priority areas.
and then from there you have. I
And
realize
then,
you're
so
a
in
really
each
large
strategic
organization.
yeah, in each strategic priority area, I think there's 4 goals each, and then there's probably 4 initiatives under each of those 4 goals.
Okay, okay.
But we are going through and trying to streamline and say, okay, which ones are gonna roll into our next plan? And which ones are we gonna make sure get done? And then update them.
And if you really keep your eye on the prize, what's the BHAG, you know, what's the big hairy audacious goal? It's scalable because, you know, if you have 5 or 25 employees, that's a lot different than if you have 500 or, you know, 100 employees. So it's really based on your talent and resource generating engine to get there. And, you know, I just think if I can do 3 things amazing, that's an incredible. But yeah, I
Absolutely.
get up in the morning, drink my coffee. That's 1, 2, no. But as an organization, you know, that's not very large. If you can think about what's realistic for your size of organization to get to your big, hairy, audacious goal. And there may be multiple KPIs that they trickle down to. That's where the detail is really important. But sometimes there's so many opportunities that are really high priorities. Well, then are they all high priorities? And so it's asking those critical questions and being okay with saying, well, not now, maybe later, or not us.
See, I think, using different words for different aspects of the plan, I've seen that based upon, you know, it could be a different client. It could be, you know, working with a federal agency in Alaska, they couldn't use priorities, they wanted key areas of focus. Some other communities wanted priority focus areas, you know, so it's always kind of deferring to what the client, the implementers of the plan, are they're gonna be comfortable with in their daily work, in that area as well. So really, it can be called anything, and I think if it's well defined in the plan, then it can certainly be anything be successful, no matter how you work it.
Got another question?
Yeah, hi, Eric. Just following up on strategic planning and of course priorities and of course implementation. You mentioned, Rebekah, you brought in consultants to help you with strategies and then potentially different perspectives and fresh perspectives.
Mhm.
So I was curious, how often do you go out to an RFP to bring in, that new perspective of consultants? I want to start with that. And then in those priorities, once you have established a big strategic priority, when do you maybe identify one specific area where you might need a consultant? You might not need one for multiple projects, but is there one thing that you?
I mean, in general, that's consultants for our strategic plan. Like Zach said, I don't know that we would do that again the next time because we went to such great lengths and put so much work into creating this one. Though we might, we'll have to see where we are. We've also talked about maybe creating a position internally that, so we have ongoing capacity that helps us manage the plan and lots of other strategic priorities that come up all the time. But we do tend to hire consultants a lot. I mean, it just depends on what are we working on? What is our capacity at the time? Do we have the level of expertise internally, or do we really feel like we need somebody to guide us through the process? But yeah, I don't hesitate to put out an RFP if we need to. And also, but sometimes because we have, again, public entity, we have to go through an RFP, that process in and of itself is long and clunky. So sometimes we're just gonna go, if it's a quick something where we can avoid that, we're gonna do that rather than going through that long process. But we don't hesitate to call in external experts, when we need them, yeah.
I think what I've seen primarily in the public sector too, is you can be telling your city council or your board, exactly what you need, resources, projects, I need more staff, that sort of thing, and they're not gonna hear it. I harken back to like, this will age me, but when you buy CDs and I wanted my wife to listen to a certain band and she just kind of dismissed it, but then her friend lent her the same CD I wanted her to listen to. So sometimes, as one of my mentors locally, former Pasco City Manager Dave Zabel says, you need the guy or the person from out of town with the suitcase to tell your leadership exactly what you've been telling them all along. And so I think that's always a benefit to having a consultant come in. And I think like what we talked about too, I mean, you can have an 18-month project for a strategic plan. You have a facilitator come in with the team and they're doing public outreach and engagement and you're spending 6 figures on it. Or you can have someone come in and meet with your staff on, a Saturday morning from 8 to 12 over donuts and coffee and just run through just some whiteboard exercises for a couple $1,000 and then you're well on your way. So it all depends on budget, what you need from your organization, and just the scale and scope of what you're looking for.
And I really view it as an ROI conversation, do we have the internal capacity and expertise? If not, it's like hiring an accountant, hiring an attorney, talking to your insurance agent. They're the experts with the training and the deep knowledge, and paying for a few hours of their time could really, really be, give your organization a significant boost.
So we heard Rebekah's timeline for a large organization. What about a medium size or small organization? What would be a good timeline for a good strategic plan?
Give everyone's favorite answer that it depends. I mean, small to medium, and we were talking before the meeting on what constitutes a small business. Could you have a business of 1? Is it 50? Is it 500? Depending upon that. I think it all depends on the scope. Do you want, are you at a spot with your business to where you're hemorrhaging staff and you can't retain and recruit people? You don't know where you're going. Maybe you don't know where your profits are going, where your money's going, that sort of thing. So you have a lot of foundational work to do to bring by bringing someone in to figure that out. Maybe you're well on your way. You have a great cohesive team and you work together. You're united on a mission. You just need further definition. So, a timeline, you could probably spend a long time working on a plan for a small, medium organization. Or you could do it pretty quick. I think it all depends.
I think as Rebekah mentioned, the first time out, it's a pretty significant investment because you're starting from gathering pieces. If you're going to be talking to customers and vendors and getting feedback from your employees, that takes time. So that initial investment, you can build some of that into the process itself so that you aren't just starting from the beginning. For small businesses, that are 25 and under, 3 months, if you could spread it out, it's again capacity because you're still serving customers, selling product, making payroll, you've got to carve out additional time. And everybody has to see that that time is going to be a worthwhile investment. So it's starting with the why. Why are we taking time away from doing this to do research, to, put information together? But 3 months is really kind of a ballpark. It depends on capacity.
I think if I can add to that, I worked with the community on the west side outside of Puyallup and Tacoma. They did a lot of the groundwork on just gathering, this is the goals of our city council, and it was this long list of like 40 items. And we spent 5 hours on a Saturday just triaging that list, compiling some things, organizing things into sections. At 5 hours on Saturday, then we brought forth a visual document to put in the back of their city council chambers to show the community, here's our organized goals and projects. A lot of groundwork there, but it was 5 hours of work for an organization of probably 50 people.
That's the span of it depends.
Exactly.
Keep that up for the next few questions. No, just kidding. Who typically runs the implementation? Is it the CEO, the COO, a project manager? The ongoing implementation?
I'm gonna say everybody, but I launch in at all these answers, so I will.
You got to have a chief wrangler. And that's a really fancy name, but it really depends on the scale of your organization. I appreciate Rebekah and CVC looking at, do we create an internal capacity so that we have that designated chief wrangler that's duly knighted and recognized by everybody who has the access to information and the power dynamics. In smaller businesses, sometimes it can't be the owner because they already have too many plates spinning in the air. So they have to really empower someone else with the right respect and authority to be able to carry that out.
We're higher ed, can't accomplish anything without a committee. So we created a different committee. So now it's the implementation team, and it's about half of it is made up of folks that were on the original planning committee, so that there was that continuity, but then it was, some more new voices. The co-chair, that was the co-chair with me on creating the plan, is co-chairing it now with somebody else in implementing it. We've had some challenges. We've hit a few speed bumps here and there. That's why we're talking about, do we need to look at somebody who truly, this would be their 100% focus on really leading this work for us on an ongoing basis, because it takes time, it takes capacity, it takes expertise still. And yeah, we're all busy, so.
If an owner was not into strategic planning, could a department do a strategic plan?
That's a really good question, because you'd want to make sure that it aligned with what the owner wanted so that your canoe isn't going down the wrong river.
And are they talking about what they wanted? Could they do a strategic plan, you mean, just for their department? Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it is good, nice to get buy-in, or at least head nod or something.
Yeah, and I've seen that. I think certainly you don't want to create silos within your organization, and having, worked the breadth of my career in local government, we could be the kings and queens of silos among local government departments. But I've seen communities where you've got a strategic plan for the police department, the fire department. Those are gonna be very specialized roles in the community, but then you've got an overarching strategic plan for the entire county, the entire city that ties into that. And I've seen strategic plans spawn individual strategic plans throughout. And you talk about how many plans do you have in your organization? You want to make sure they talk, but certainly I think of an individual department, if you're not seeing that from your organization, but you've got sort of that permission, you're not going to rock the boat with leadership, but you want to drive your own goals and mission. I don't see why you couldn't do a strategic plan and get after it.
Yeah. The ideal is there is the overall organizational plan, and then everybody else has their plans that feed into that. But yeah, you're right, sometimes that's not possible.
Process for developing a BHAG.
It really, from me, what's your vision, what's your mission? And then what is the thing that gets in the way of achieving that vision and mission? And how can we describe that, get buy-in, enrich the understanding of that?
We'll have these conversations maybe each quarter and say, okay, what's the most pressing need right now? What is it that absolutely has to get done? And if we had to put everything else aside, what's going to be the one thing we have to make sure that we've accomplished? That's how we've kind of gotten at what those short-term BHAGs are.
We call it what keeps you awake at 2 a.m.
There we go.
I like seeing the compilation of, if you do community engagement or you do customer engagement, stakeholder engagement to see, and I think you made a great point to identify the barriers and get everyone's goals and everything that your organization touches, every group, customer, interview them, survey them, have focus groups and identify, okay, what are your key priority areas, key focus areas, whatever word you want, Lori. And then identify, okay, what's your barrier to achieve that? And I think that's an important question in developing your BHAG, because a lot of people will have their own opinions saying, okay, it's budget, it's money, or I don't have enough staff. And that helps achieve that goal. That helps formulate it by identifying, okay, this is idealistically what we want, what's going to stop me, and then you can formulate your strategy to get around it.
I'm going to layer onto that,
Please.
leveraging what you said about the asset lens. And so we both talked about, what is the barrier that gets in the way? What best can support getting to achieving your vision? So that's kind of two sides of the same coin. But if you look at, what's going right and how can we strengthen that, as well as what needs to be stopped or fixed or dropped or changed. I think that's two sides of the same coin.
Good.
Is there anything, quick?
So if you don't, let's say that you come up with a VHAG and you don't achieve it, how do you keep it as a goal you still want to achieve or as a motivator rather than a detractor, and the team feels that, something was failed or not accomplished?
Like absorbing lessons learned and, is this still where we want to be? What worked well toward making progress? What got in our way? What do we need to change if that's still where we want to be? Because often challenges come up or resources change and get in the way of our original implementation plan. So maybe the timeline just extended instead of where we originally thought it would be. It's not a fault, it's an opportunity to learn forward.
Yeah, I think you have to try and figure out, so why didn't we achieve it? Was it, because they should be aspirational, but still achievable. So, was it set the right way? Or was it too far of a reach for us? But if it was the right goal, maybe the metric was just too high or what have you. Yeah, I think you need to then, as LoAnn said, just recalibrate. Okay, what have we done so far? What worked, what didn't work? How do we learn? And let's keep moving forward, but implement what we've just learned from achieving it. Because if it was the right goal overall, I think you need to keep it front and center. Otherwise, to some extent, I think it's going to be discouraging for the organization to know, well, we say these things, but we don't really mean them because we weren't intentional about making sure we achieved them. And then the next time you try and do it, you're not gonna
Lose credibility.
yeah.
Exactly.
Is there anything magical about going off-site with your team to start strategic planning?
Offsite's always magical.
I think I've seen offsite, particularly having worked in city halls and you work in a big building. Offsite kind of gets you away from those distractions where someone can find you. Someone can pull you in, you're on break maybe, and you're in an 8-hour retreat on site. But you're using the restroom and then you get pulled into another meeting, you get pulled into a phone call. So I think offsite, it changes the perspectives of people. It's certainly a different drive into the facility than your morning commute. So you're kind of in a different area. If you can afford to put them up someplace and really go offsite, that's even better because I think it's good for team building and you're kind of trapped there too. I mean, we're all accessible by phones, laptops, everything, but you're offsite, you're not getting pulled into anything. So
And I think part of that is defining off-site. So even if you physically go off-site, having a common agreement about access to technology while you're in the planning session. You know, it is distracting to some people to have people reading their emails on their watches while you're brainstorming or doing a SWOT analysis or something else. So really defining off-site, what that means from a technology access perspective.
Yeah, there's so many affordable rooms, you know, just in the Tri-Cities, restaurants or wineries or, I don't know, is this room available for? Yeah, this kind of thing that I think there is so much value to trying to just get out of your normal surroundings to do the work.
Or find another business and swap sites,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
barter away.
So as a small business for us, a lot of our goals are monetary, like we're gonna hit this revenue goal. So then would the strategies be how we hit it, like, oh, in order to hit that, we need to purchase a new vehicle or so is that the strategy behind the goal? Then is that?
Those are kind of tactics of how to get there, you know, and who's gonna do what when. But the goal is what are we trying to achieve and the why, so that everybody can buy into that.
Yeah, I agree. Those small steps to get to your goal. So if it's monetary, you know, maybe you need to boost your reserve funds.
And then if we've got it, where it's like, okay, so much has to come from this department and so much we're planning coming from this department, would those departments build in their own strategic
Yeah.
plan? then?
They're KPIs, you know, they're key performance indicators for that department. Like I use the example of retaining customers and then getting customers to buy more, to spend more with us. You know, that could be higher volume, higher product prices. And each of those trickles down into different KPIs or key performance indicators because they involve different people in the organization. So that's kind of an example.
And when you're doing so much needs to come from each department, and this actually goes without saying, but make sure you're looking at how much have they traditionally brought in, and so that you're stretching them, but still making them achievable.
Besides CCSS from LoAnn, any other good employee survey questions that really get to the heart of strategic planning?
Again, with the SOAR model, a lot of it was, you know, your best experience or a best experience you've heard of that somebody had with the college or at the college, you know, what made it that way. So it was more focused on, again, those kind of asset basis. But then also a lot of the dreaming questions, you know, like, dream, how would you design the college? What would it look for you? You know, what is the best it could be? Yeah.
I always like asking if they were boss for the day or 30 days. What would be the one positive thing they would implement for the organization? We've done that in communities. If you were mayor or you were in charge of the city council for a day, what would you do? I think that brings a lot of good insight as well. But preface it, what positive thing you would do, not, you know, fire George.
I was gonna ask, I always love a good fire to put out because it identifies a problem and I can go solve that, but let's say that everything is going, you know, everything is going well. And then, you know, we have to think strategically, and I mean, naturally, you just kind of, at least I go to, okay, we're just doing more of whatever we're doing now. I guess it kind of comes from the research process, but how do you go and identify potential areas where you can potential areas for opportunity?
I think that's the listening sessions that we referred to, you know, because that brings external perspectives. What are customers saying? What are your reviews saying? What are your employees saying? Vendors, you know, if you're depending on suppliers, what trends do they see that will give you new opportunities, or your technology providers? Just finding out where they see things changing, and then how might that affect opportunities for your business?
Yeah. Identify those trends.
Because it's, especially when you're smaller scale and you're wearing multiple hats, it's really easy to get into a comfortable box until it's not.
I mean, we strive for that comfortable box. Yay, we're there. Will it be there tomorrow?
Let's thank our experts. Thank you for donating your time and expertise today to help us all. Their information is on the back counter, the best way to contact them. And the slides will be emailed to you if you registered, whether you're here or virtually. And the video of today is placed on YouTube if you want to say, hey, so-and-so, you need to listen to that. You can also see the past Ask the Experts that we had. One was on KPIs just recently. So if you want to learn more about that. We also like to thank STCU for sponsoring Ask the Experts, making it free to participate. And would you please do us a favor and fill out the survey, the evaluation form. So they are on, everybody get one on their way in. No, we didn't get them this day. Okay, so they're on the back. We'll make sure you get one of those. And the QR code here on the screen for those that are virtual really helps us make these even better. And we even ask you for other topics that you'd like to hear over the course of the year. If it is here, you can leave them face down on the table, or like I said, use the QR code if you are on Zoom. I've left you a tool as well on the back counter, annual business goals, where you want to be in 10 years. So just another tool backed by the cookies. And the other one is just fantastic on the Dig Deeper resources. Please take a look at those, and we put those in the links for you on Zoom. Okay, that next Ask the Experts is always the fourth Tuesday of the month from 3 to 4:30. And the next one is July 25th. And our topic is dynamic digital marketing. Want to know what's trending in email these days? What do you need on your website? SEO, all that stuff. We all need it for our businesses, right? So we have 3 experts coming on the 25th. So don't miss that one. Please register, whether you're going to be on Zoom or here in person. We would love to have you join us again. Again, thank you for coming, and may your business prosper as 2023 goes into the second half of the year.